Communicating in what?
In all emojis.
Well, emoji
The,
is
the whole the whole podcast is just an emoji. It's just
I mean, is that? I mean, how are we gonna? I mean, it would have to. How do we do that in an audio? Like, how do we make like emojis audio? Do we just say smiley face, frowny face, smiley face? Like, would there be no way this would get on? That would get on SoundCloud. I mean, that
poop
would get on
emoji,
SoundCloud, but we
poop emoji, poop
poop
emoji,
emoji, poop emoji, smiley emoji, frown emoji, smiley emoji, wince emoji,
crazy emoji.
crazy emoji. All right, let's play some music and get this podcast started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Welcome to Karate Without Belts. I'm John.
And I'm Jeremy.
We have no idea what to talk about today. Because there's absolutely nothing important going on in the world as we're recording this, because we're not going to date the podcast anymore, apparently, for business purposes, purely. And there's nothing controversial going on. It's a normal year. Everyone's in good health. There's nothing running around. There's no great political strife. There's no great, societal upheaval. Everything's good, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, whatever.
Jeremy gets all of his news from the dystopian Mad Max future of Australia. That beam down.
Hey, you know what? I mean, Jim Bob's news channel out of the Ozarks. I'm telling you what,
That'd be a very good.
I mean,
that'd be a good move. That'd be a good move.
You start off the newscast with a shotgun blast. I mean, it's got to be real news. I mean, come on, man. So it's all good.
Of course. Jeremy, how you been doing, bud?
Oh man. Anyway, so it's all good.
That's a good answer.
That and the noodle and catfish report. I mean, hey, you can't go wrong with that either. From Three Finger Charlie. So it's kind of, it's all good. So,
noodle and catfish. I feel like that would be a really good spinoff to this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, if nobody knows what it is, I don't know if it's a Ozark thing or whatever, but they go out to the Ozarks, they'll put their fingers near the banks and they'll wiggle their fingers, hopefully that a catfish will think that it's an actual worm. They'll bite their fingers and they'll yank up a catfish without any line lures or anything else. And so, I mean, it's an art, but I mean, sometimes you lose a finger.
You're going to have a limited capacity there, depending on how hungry you are versus how many fingers you're willing to lose.
Exactly.
So, there's a technique, fish spear technique. There's a perfect practical use for Nunti. I feel like you spear the fish, get the catfish, grow up close enough. Eventually, I do want to create you've seen Big Fish, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I want to actually create like a karate version of Big Fish, where it's just like somebody talking about a black belt test that happened one time, and it's just utter nonsense. It's complete bullshit, and they're just making up this story, and it's just a student trying to help his sundowning teacher, and everyone convincing him that all of his lies are actually completely fine because everything else is terrible. Mm-hmm. So, just spitballing ideas. Jeremy, what have you been working on this week?
I've actually been doing some Subarito training along with Manji Sai, so that's been pretty good. So
that's a good mix.
Yeah,
your forearms must be happy.
Well, yeah, a couple of days they were not so happy, but today they're good.
Yeah, well, building that strength. I still got to get one. I still got to get a Subarito. This week has been fighting insomnia, but today I did like 13-kilometer run, so it wasn't too bad. This week is kicked off Fujin TV. So for anybody listening who doesn't know what that is, it's a new. So I like to say, is it weird for us to do a plug at the beginning of the podcast, Jeremy? I like to put it this way. I'm wondering if we'll try this out live and see what you think. Fujin TV, a platform by martial artists for martial artists.
Cool.
It's got a lot of karate stuff. We're on there, so we'll be on there by the end. And people who like the service and platform, I mean, stick with it. We're gonna put a promo code in the description, so give it a try. You can do it for like 5 weeks, and it's actually cheaper than Netflix. So, and if you like what we do, you're actually helping us out listening there. And if you like what we do, we're gonna put some more stuff on there, just as special extra. We'll probably also premiering Three Finger Catfish, Jeremy's spinoff podcast, but. Because for the amount that we actually do talk on like the times that we record, we could probably completely cut that as well and make it stitched together to a completely different podcast.
Oh my. Anyway.
I mean, we've been talking for probably 20 minutes and Jeremy's already sick of this. Today, what I thought we'd get into, and we can maybe run a little shorter or longer depending upon how far this goes, but Jeremy brought up an interesting thing when he asked me what was the funnest lesson I'd ever done or had. And it got me to a point where I was thinking, is karate supposed to be fun? And is training supposed to be enjoyable? There's definitely a school of thought that is against that. And Jeremy, I wanted to know what your thoughts were on that, and kind of maybe we can go into kind of that initial question you asked that way.
To me, if you're doing the same thing all the time and you're constantly under the gun all the time doing very serious. I think part of that doesn't help with your overall training. I think you have to be in a complete different mindsets at all times. Sometimes very, very serious. Sometimes as if you're in a good mood. And one of the things I was thinking about as we were kind of talking about this was not to say, this is the way it is. No, not that at all. Whenever you're not in a dojo setting or training hall, you're training whatever, you're not always going to be out in public. Always, I'm very serious. I have to do this. It's not. You're not going to have that same mentality going outside the training hall. So I think sometimes it is good to kind of lighten some lessons up just for your mental stability, not just inside your training hall, but also outside. Because, there's going to be times, you're going to have hopefully one of these days we'll have celebratory things. You can go to, birthday dinners and different things like that with family and friends. You're not going to be on that straight edge all the time. So I think that's where the benefits of, sometimes having lessons or training that's a little bit lighthearted as opposed to just, being under the gun all the time. So that's my thought.
Right. And I think there's, in your initial training, do you feel there was ever anything like that? Or do you feel like it was more straight, everything had to be straight laced?
I think,
because you came up at a different time than I did, and
yeah,
I think by the time I had started training, some of that had kind of gone away, but some of that had also it had very much changed.
I would say it was really pretty strict until I hit around an intermediate kind of Q rank. So it was kind of like, make sure your basics are boom, 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 boom. And then once you started putting basics with kata, with bogu, with weapons, with technique, I think once you're really interacting with pretty much everything, I think there were times when things were a little more lighthearted, and hey, what about and you could kind of it kind of gave you a little bit more freedom to explore things and really figure out, not just having somebody tell you why it didn't work, but actually seeing for yourself why something didn't work. Oh, okay, this is why it doesn't work. Don't be stupid doing this. Okay, got it. Okay. So.
Well, and that goes into kind of the humanity of it, because if you are karate training robot man, then you're exactly that. You're karate training robot man. There's something to be said about the emotional range in which we train people.
Right.
I don't think is actually really talked about all that well. And I've seen this with some of the older folks that, and some people who do like law enforcement and stuff like that, whereas that their emotional range is somewhat stunted by maybe older school views of just how that is, because you have to have these people, process it. And then when you take that to where you're training just kind of regular people on the street, it doesn't combine, it doesn't connect the same way. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I can definitely see the difference with the level set of training from that perspective. A lot of law enforcement personnel, I mean, they're under the gun all the time. I mean, they are high stress, high activity careers all the time. I mean, even when they're off the clock, they're on the clock. So it's just
well, we've, I guess this year has kind of shown that are some consequences to having that, to not managing that, and not managing what that entails. I don't want to get into that, but even those people, even those guys need to find a way of dealing with that. I honestly don't feel there's enough resources for them to deal with where they're at. What's funny is some people who been talking about, kind of what's been going on is like, well, what are you going to do? Let the police officers like only going to have police officers on for 40 weeks out of the year? I'm like, yeah, sure. Give them like 12 weeks off. Let them like deal with their stuff. Have like reserve guys on. That's just an idea, right?
yeah, yeah,
But I mean, it's like when you put that kind of mindset on when you're training with people, like just kind of people, your bakers, your candlestick makers, those still exist. Like your every walks of life people who walk into a dojo, or even in a more personal setting where it's just your family or your friends, right? Because
yeah.
there's people who do that as well. I feel even then that is where there's a huge difference. And so, without being able to express that emotional range to your students, they're not able to express that in their training. And if that doesn't show, then it's not gonna pour out. If you know what I mean.
I think having some lightheartedness in the dojo on some lessons. Now, I don't think it's good for your beginning belts, things like that. I don't think that's good, because then you kind of set a pattern for their learning capacity, and I don't think that's always good.
Well, you want to be able to set a tone of this is serious,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And would you say there's a difference between tone of seriousness, the intent of seriousness versus a constant tone?
Well, yeah, and I mean, you can definitely be serious intent wise, but there's times to kind of tamper back a little bit. Or I remember, I don't know why we were doing it, but I remember one night we were doing that. This is not advised for anybody out there, but we were
This is the
we were doing
parental guidance board.
yeah, well, we were doing a nunchaku class, which one can cause a lot of entertaining YouTube videos in and of itself, but somebody had broken out the aomori, and so we we were drinking aomori while we're doing a nunchaku class, and those two,
It's not a kids class.
huh?
Clearly, this was not a kids class.
No, this was not a kids class, so it became more entertaining than normal. So it was, a couple people were, doing figure eights, and all of a sudden, bam, you'd see somebody pop themselves in the side of the head, or but a couple of them were so lit up they really didn't feel it. So I mean, that was quite the entertaining class. Now, once again, I do not recommend doing that at all, but it was quite an entertaining class. And there are other things that we've done. I think some of the more enjoyable classes, or things that I got the most out of, sometimes were just kind of stepping back and letting people kind of explore what's possible. One, I think you learn at an immense rate, and then also you definitely get ideas on different things. Like, one of the things we used to do was, this is kind of odd. This was at Mike's dojo, is we would do what we call, just open hands shadow boxing sparring kind of deal. Where I mean, it wasn't full pads, but it was completely empty hand. There was no closed fist, so we'd come in just try to do something different. We'd get into like a grab and get to a point. It's like, okay, what are you gonna do? 1, 2, 3, done. And you count something. We do stuff like that, or a lot of times you just change up training a little bit. One of my favorite things was doing kata around the Joe box.
Which for those of you who don't know, we mentioned it on here a couple times, but Joe box is when you take a Joe and you just make a box out of it. You got 4 Joe. Joe's supposed to be about what, 4 feet? 4 feet.
Yeah, 4x4 box. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you got a 4x4 box, and you basically just do your training inside of that. And
well, yeah, I mean, basically what you do is you're kind of going off, like a plus sign and an X inside that box, corner to corner, mid side, mid side. And so basically you're doing each kata 8 times. You're hitting each one of those lines as your starting point. And one of the reasons why I got started with it was to not be room acclimated doing a kata,
which is something a lot of people end up doing.
And guess what? I'm guilty of doing that as well. So it happens. But I mean that was one of the best ways I ever learned to break that. I mean, we do that with weapons. We did that with everything. So, once you got proficient with it, go around Joe box and do your kata, 8 times or 16 times or whatever. So, I mean, different things like that.
So I guess what we're more getting into here is kind of more about fun training and more of like lack of monotonous training.
And I mean, sometimes when you start doing that kind of stuff, I mean, you kind of have a little bit more, I guess, some ways a little bit more freedom to kind of do what you're doing. You're not okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's more okay. Let's do this stuff like that.
Change it up.
Yeah, exactly. I remember another thing we used to do at Robbie's school was we used to do bogu on a balance beam.
And that changes things up entirely.
Oh, yeah.
It's entirely new litigation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, now granted, I mean, your balance beam was not 4 feet off the floor. It was maybe 6 inches off the floor, but still, I mean, you definitely had to have quite a bit of balance. You had to have, I mean, it was good training. So, and it was fun, so.
I think it goes into something that a lot of people hear, something we kind of see in the principle in like the Kokoroi or guiding principles is that it's like, use the training tools. Don't be stuck in one thing. And I think there's where people feel like they're hitting their limitations or they're hitting a kind of a wall on something. That generally means you need to do something different or you need to find a new way of approaching it. Yeah. And I think that can go into what you're talking about is just doing something different or doing a different approach to it. Another way of going about it is just having a different attitude towards it. Right. Where it's I think is the best way to put this is where I've seen a karate class where it was taught by the main teacher of the school, and that teacher of the school was teaching the kids and was teaching the adults, and he was doing it the exact same way. There was absolutely no calisthenics. There was absolutely no anything. It was just forms, yakusoku forms, yakusoku forms, the end. Like, it was very clear that the guy knew what he was doing, or knew what he wanted to do, and in no way was helping any of the students.
Well, except for that limited scope.
Then you got this other guy in there who I guess was just an assistant teacher. I don't know. And this was a kid, mind you, this was most like kids class that I was watching. But then this other guy, this I guess kind of younger guy, goes in there and he starts to have him doing like push-ups and sit-ups and just has him do like fun stuff and like Like just do like run back and forth at the dojo, try to do like this and that. And somebody can say that's just kids stuff. I think that's where maybe the criticism of that would be, where that's kid stuff when you're doing a real, strong blah blah. Yeah, that's all right and all. Like you need to have, I guess, a core of stuff you need to accomplish or you need to work on. How you get there, on the other hand, can be anyone's business.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like if you do have that variable training, I think where people talk about calisthenics in class, we can even talk about it in that regards, right? What do you think? Do you think what would be the best time to do calisthenics, before class or after class, or before proper karate training as it's in its own, or after that?
I'm kind of a little bit different on that. I definitely see the benefit of doing it before. Definitely. 100%.
Now, why do you say that?
I just see it warms you up, and therefore you're warmed up, you're ready to go. I mean, it's your muscles aren't so stiff as you're trying to do things. But I forget who it was. Somebody I was learning with. I can't remember who it was, but anyway, one of the things they said is, don't ever do calisthenics. Just come in straight off the street and just go.
Interesting. What was their reason?
And the reason why, and I asked them, they're like, how many times do you stretch before you go out, out in public? And I'm like, a lot of times I'd stretch, in the morning and stuff. Yeah, but by the time you go out in public, a lot of times you're usually no longer stretched out, so therefore you're going straight out in public. So are you warmed up? Are you, and so they brought a little bit of reality to that conversation. You're like, okay, I can kind of see that, but as I get older, and I feel older today, but anyway, I'm really starting to see, yeah, probably stretching out's a little bit beneficial before you start any type of training. So
I would agree with that entirely. I think kind of to make the separation there, where it's like you can stretch, right? Stretching and kind of warming up your muscles, right?
yeah,
That's one thing. But I think I'm thinking more in terms of like hardcore push up, sit up, whatever, squats or whatever, right? I would say, because I've seen both arguments for this. I've seen it played out in different ways where, you can do what people tend to do, is that they do the push-ups and the sit-ups and the jumping jacks and all that stuff prior to doing the karate. And that can be good to a degree, but it generally feels rushed.
Yeah.
Because they want to get through all that, and people will be able to really do push-ups really well, or won't be able to do push-ups really well, or won't be able to, but will kind of flum through it, and then they'll get to the karate stuff, and they'll possibly be too tired to do the karate stuff, possibly, depending on the person's fitness.
Yeah.
And the other, everyone gets to hear my squeaky chair. So for everyone because no one can actually see this podcast, but Jeremy actually stood more or less every podcast he's done, and I've been sitting down every podcast we've ever done. So, somebody's hearing my squeaky chair. I'm sorry, but Jeremy's a trooper, and he's like, I'm gonna man stand for.
No, it's just my setup. That's it. So that's all it is. So.
I just thought it'd be interesting to point out. But the other argument I've seen for that is doing this stuff afterwards. You can focus on doing it right because you've gotten through all the karate stuff. You've gotten through all that type of training. Possibly you're tired. Possibly you're not. But then after that, you can actually work on your muscles and work on hitting muscle groups with full intensity because you don't have to worry about anything after class. It's hopefully not, but you don't have to worry about actually working on more stuff for karate, that is. So, there's two arguments in that direction, but you can use either to test either thing. So, and I think that goes into the question of enjoyability, right? Because should we not enjoy our training? And I don't mean in just saying, let's just kick back and enjoy. Because with karate, there is no kicking back and enjoying, or just kicking back, as it were.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but sometimes whenever I've taught a class or in the middle of a seminar or something like that, and when I notice things are getting just seems to be too serious and people aren't moving forward with the lessons at hand. Sometimes breaking things up isn't a bad thing. I'll never forget this. We're down in New Zealand, doing working on their summer camp, or working with their summer camp people and stuff.
Shout out to our Kiwi peeps.
Yeah, go Kiwis.
Go All Blacks.
Go All Blacks. Yes.
We have a stake in that. Is there only three All Blacks? Because do we like any other? What is it? I don't want to say lacrosse. Rugby.
Rugby.
Completely forgot about it because we haven't had any like real sports in a year.
I mean, you know, I'm always a fan of the All Blacks, but I do enjoy watching some other teams. Over the last Rugby World Cup, I really did. Please don't kill me from everybody from New Zealand, but I was really enjoying watching the Wales team play. I really kind of enjoyed them, but
You're not on social media.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, all right. I enjoy watching them play. I just thought they played very well, but that was me too. So I since here in the States we don't get much rugby, so I mean if I get to see like a high school match, I'll watch it. So anyway, so anyway,
this has been our digression on rugby.
Well, I wish they'd play that other than NFL. So anyway, but that's just me. So I mean, and I'm living here in the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, go Chiefs. All right, whatever. So all right.
Remember, some people think Gritty saved America. So
yeah, whatever. We're down in New Zealand working in their summer camp and stuff, and I mean everybody's just so serious about whatever they're working. I mean, I don't even remember what they were working on, and all of a sudden, I just let out just the loudest Bruce Lee kind of. I mean, just everybody freaked. I mean, it was like I scared every single person, which was probably about 100, 150 people in that building. Just scared them. I thought they almost peed their pants. And it's like, okay, everybody relax. Let's get back to it. Okay, just relax a little bit. And everybody started laughing about it. But what was funny is, people were after that, people were actually starting to get what was being taught. They just needed to relax a little bit. So sometimes you need that.
Right, and I think what is it? The best teachers, I think, know when to implement that.
Yeah.
Like if you have a good teacher, and I think this is not saying that anybody who's like more of a hard nosed teacher is bad if they don't know. Even if those guys know how to best implement, a stern side of a personality, and a more mellow side of their personality. I would say as they get older, they tend to allow the mellow side to come out, and possibly maybe a bit too much sometimes, right? Because there can be too much of it, where no one takes it seriously, and everyone just doesn't seem to care or isn't training hard or seriously at all. And I think there's a balance to be struck there between. I think this is kind of how I view what we're doing here, and I think how I just view karate now in general, or I think it's most things, is that things seriously, but you have to like treat it as a joke. You know what I mean? Where it's like you can this thing can turn over into a joke in a second. That's okay, because that's life, right? Your life can go from being a tragedy to being a farce, to being a comedy, in a split second, right? Training is exactly the same way.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's not necessarily the worst thing in the world.
and depending upon what you're working on, depends on the level of seriousness. You need to be either extremely attentive or basically, okay, I can kind of let up a little bit on this or whatever. Like if you're working with somebody on technique, you better have your head in the game. You better be pretty serious because either you can get hurt or you can hurt someone else.
Or sparring, which is
Yeah,
that's even more. I mean, especially going full contact, you do not want to get knocked out because you weren't paying attention because you weren't taken seriously. But that being
yeah,
said, I think some of the best times you have is when you are engaged, you're having a good time, and you feel like you're doing it. You know what I mean? Like you feel like
yeah.
you're actually doing karate.
And I think also I've noticed certain classes that are really, really, I don't know, really, really awesome seem to be when everybody was connected and everybody was on that same page.
Yes, yes, and that's magic. There's a certain kind of alchemy, a certain sort of chemistry. I feel that needs to be, and knowing how to do that's hard.
I would say probably Sensei Oyata was an expert at that. I think he truly was. He knew when everybody was coming together. That was one of the things I picked up from him. He was very good at doing that, and then once once he had everybody on the same page, then I think that's when he was really, then he was given whatever he wanted to give at that point. Just, just go, go, go. And so that's my experience. Other people probably have a different experience, but because looking back at some of the seminars that I attended, it really seemed like, okay, I noticed he really started teaching a lot of stuff at this point. Why? Everybody was together. Everybody was on the same page. So
Well, I think that's just kind of happy social. I don't want to say that's happy social accident, but I think anyone is able to do that. Speaking as somebody, I'm in the teaching profession professionally. You're a teacher sometimes, and classes,
not
right?
anymore. Not much anymore, but
Eh, but
eh,
and I think like everyone has that experience is when you feel like the whole room actually can absorb more,
yeah,
and then you actually have a freedom to kind of let more out,
yeah,
right? Because if you don't feel like you can't, because the other side of that is that if people aren't enjoying themselves or they're unengaged, you can try to open up the floodgates as much as possible and nothing's going in.
I think that's when the instructor has to. Part of it, or what's worked for me, is actually actually giving personal experience. It seems like you that are kind of old leadership joke from leadership seminar was, tell one on yourself. If you kind of tell kind of something, something that's happened to you in the past or some experience you've had, people start to kind of listen. It seems to get their attention a little bit quicker. So
No, 100%, and I think people form around a narrative.
yeah, and not only that, but I think it also shows a little bit of vulnerability from the instructor itself, as opposed to uh, one of the terms in colleges, like, do you have a actual professor or do you have a sage on the stage? I am I am this, I am that, or you're an absolute moron because you can't relate to anybody. That's a problem. So
Well, and that's the thing is where you get the engagement from that vulnerability, and that builds a better relationship with the students, and it gives you the better ability to teach.
yeah,
And, and it goes back to, hey, it's a fun class. Hey, it's fun. Hey,
yeah,
we can go back there and enjoy this. Hey, that guy's good. And I think just even like that idea in itself is what I think gets people to come back to doing things. I don't go into my profession that much because I don't talk about my business, okay? But what I keep on hearing, especially in my profession, is that the reason why people don't pick up a language is because they don't enjoy it. And what I constantly see in my profession is people not learning that lesson, and making people hate it, right?
Yeah.
And if you make people hate it, you're gonna make people hate you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially from a martial arts perspective, if you're talking from running a dojo, you don't want that
No.
for a lot of reasons, and you do not want resentment. You do not want boredom, right? And
No.
you want and enjoyment. I feel is an ingredient to help people grow. Not always,
Yeah.
and the dangerous side of that can also be is people are going there for entertainment,
True.
and so you don't want that to happen. So finding that balance.
I mean, if it happens, be able to manage around it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely seen my share of. I don't mean to sound mean, but kind of soccer mom karate.
Yeah. I
And,
mean,
and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's like, oh well, I do this little thing karate thing, and I go over here, and then Tuesday I got the Pilates class, and then on Friday night I do a knitting class, and over here is this and book club, and it's like,
she's
okay,
got
you're
book club.
filling up your schedule.
She's got book club, knitting, karate, and Pilates. It's interesting. When is she taking care of her kids? Where's the dad?
Well, they're always at soccer. No, anyway, sorry.
That's all right.
It's all good. I mean, and I mean that in very lighthearted. It wasn't. I'm not trying to be PC or anything. It's just kind of a lighthearted thing. But I've seen that from time to time where people just try to fill their schedule with something. Just like, are you really getting anything out of this? And so they look at it as a thing. But and sometimes they're having fun, and sometimes they're not. So
well, and I think that's where I see it as being able to bring all sorts in is when you're able to take that get that person and make them enjoy it, and then enjoyment is a pathway to understanding. It's not always, but I mean it is a pathway to understanding. If you enjoy something and you want to learn more about it, or if you enjoy something and want to support it, that's not bad.
no, it's not bad. Just sometimes it gets a little frustrating. But
It can. I would agree with that. But it doesn't mean. And I think this is if you don't understand why that needs to be. If you're one of those people who feels the need to constantly make it prison tough karate or something like that, where
so,
I think I got around that one. I think I got around that one all right. But if you're trying to be like hard brand karate or whatever, and we're only gonna have the most badass people in here. No one else will come in here. We're gonna take this mush and turn it into muscle and all that other stuff. I mean, that's okay. Maybe we'll see what you get. And I think that's maybe where the MMA crowd has gone. Because it's funny we talk about this with karate, but when it comes to that stuff, that just completely goes out the window.
yeah,
At least to a degree, all the degrees I've seen.
yeah, definitely to a point. So yeah, I'd agree.
I think if you're enjoying something and you feel it's benefiting you, you feel like you can contribute something to it, that's good. And if you're a teacher who doesn't understand why people aren't enjoying it, maybe you need to take a look at why people enjoy other people's stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Cool. Anything you want to kind of say as a wrap up?
No, I mean, I don't know. I'm you know go back and look at 30 years of training and stuff, and looking at some of the fun lessons that I've been a part of, looking at some of the real good, interesting things that I learned along the way. I mean, even stuff in when I went to Okinawa or just training with certain people. It's just been an interesting journey along the way. I'll say that much. So, I think if I wouldn't have had fun along the way, it definitely wouldn't be. I don't think I would have been training for 30 years. That's for sure. So,
Well, then I think the best way to cap this off is just say, enjoy the journey.
absolutely.
Cool, cool, cool. So, Jeremy, what are you working on this week?
I'm going to go back to Subrito, Manji Sai, and Nahanchi katas, and go back to doing that this week. So it's been maybe throw in some Sai work as well, just not just Manji Sai, also Sai work as well. So
I might get Manjusai before this year is out. I don't know. So I depends if I can get on a boat somewhere without fear of deadly disease, which constantly weighing the pros and cons over. But for me this week, I'm outside of attempting to get better shoes. I'm going to maybe try to make a Joe box.
that's cool.
That might be something we do eventually, is to show people how to do that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Just to maybe plug this at the end again, check out Fujin TV. We're on there. If you like us, Jeremy has executive produced at least 3 shows that are going to be on the way. Executive produced. You didn't have to do anything. You just put your name.
Oh, okay, cool. All right.
What do you think all these other streaming shows do?
All right. Okay. Sure.
Some shows we enjoy have like 9 executive producers.
Okay, that works.
Or 21 executive producers. What do you think? 21 people do anything? No. There's like probably the 2 people who actually do the work, and then the 21 people get paid.
Okay. No, that works. Just put me at the bottom of the list. I'm good. So.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening, and as always, keep training.